Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargav. Welcome to Tidbits on Business and Finance with me. The G7 nations, in their recent end of the summit statement, condemned China's non-transparent and market-distorting international trade practices. They said that they would seek to extricate themselves from economic independence on China. The group vowed to foster diversification and resilience to economic coercion by China and vowed to reduce its strategic dependence on it. The German Chancellor added that it was very clear that they need to diversify their supply chains and exports, which he said means having an eye on the entire Asian zone because many nations have risen there, including China. In other words, look at other Asian nations also for their supplies. In order to wean away nations from China's alluring debt traps, the group pledged an investment of $600 billion in global infrastructure projects. This determined statement shows a major shift in stand of the G7 nations against China. Earlier, the US was the lone warrior opposing China. The EU nations led by Germany were not with the USA, which has long been wary of China's trade practices, which it says are designed to accord an unfair advantage to Chinese companies over their foreign competitors. But the unending Ukraine conflict and China's refusal to distance itself from Putin have got the likes of Germany too on board and to reconsider its economic alliance with China. The Ukraine war and China's military belligerence have now solidly united the G7 bloc of nations against China, determined to reduce their economic dependence on it and to build alternate manufacturing options in other nations. They need to move away from China, and that too when it comes to strategic supplies in particular. There is nothing new in seeking such alternates to China, since China's geopolitical and trade frictions have already pursued many MNCs to adopt a China Plus policy, where they are setting up manufacturing facilities in other nations also, in order to reduce their dependence on China. While the departure of companies out of China has caught momentum, it is yet to reach an alarming situation, and the chances are that it will be difficult for the G7 nations to replace China in the global supply chains for many years to come. It is going to take time. China is very well entrenched into the system. The Nikkei weekly reports that China's strict pandemic controls, which have been blocking production and logistics, threaten to add impetus to their manufacturing exodus from China, which has been picking up speed for the past decade. The weekly says that rising labor costs in China and the worsening US-China relationship on one hand and low labor costs and surging domestic demand in Southeast Asia and India on the other hand have made them the most popular destinations for foreign investors. So the Nikkei thinks, like many others, that it is Southeast Asian nations and India which are becoming alternates to China as far as setting up production facilities are concerned. Nikkei, however, says that so far most of the manufacturing which has left China has involved low-end processes, which does not hurt China's global dominant manufacturing position at all. This trend is in fact forcing an upgrade and transformation of China's manufacturing towards high value and sophisticated goods, where it has little competition from India and also other Asian countries. The outflow of manufacturing out of China is thus at the moment mainly that of textiles, apparels, shoes, household plastic goods, furniture, and low-end assembly of consumer electronics. It then says that at present neither India nor any of the Southeast Asian nations can replace China as a global manufacturing hub in the near future, since according to it, they are mainly engaged in labor-intensive and low-value-add jobs and products. The report emphatically says that despite the present exit of companies from China, its global industrial and supply chain is stable, since it has a complete industrial system with advantages in industrial capacity and also a lot of professional talent to handle it. It thus says that its business environment is continuously improving and that the attraction of its domestic market is still growing for the foreign investors to come in and set up plants there. This huge attractive Chinese domestic market which lures MNCs to it is evident from the fact that while foreign companies exported goods worth about $900 billion from China in 2020, they however sold goods worth $1.4 trillion to domestic Chinese consumers in that year. That's the kind of market they are able to cater by setting up their bases in China, and that also explains why they are attracted to it. China thus recorded a jump of 16.9% in its exports in May 2022, resulting in a staggering trade surplus of 78.76 billion in that month. In just 1 month, it had a surplus of 78.76 billion, and this surplus in April was $51.12 billion. That's the magnitude of trade surpluses that China continues to build. The question is that with the G7 determined to reduce its economic dependence on China and MNCs pursuing a China plus policy for setting up alternates to their Chinese manufacturing facilities in other countries, is it finally advantage India? Will foreign companies flock to India as the ideal alternate, as the optimum substitute to manufacturing in China? Our Prime Minister has been pursuing a Make in India campaign since many years and is now also providing a PLI support of 97 lakh crore rupees to manufacturing being set up in India, aiming to turn India into a global manufacturing powerhouse by cutting red tape and attracting investments. That's what he's trying. How far and how soon will it succeed in being a manufacturing alternate to China is a billion-dollar question. The likes of Piyush Goyal, India's Commerce Minister, claim that India is rapidly emerging as the preferred country for FDI in the manufacturing sector, for which he points to the 76% jump in FDI in the sector last year, amounting to a total of $21.34 billion. In an interesting article, the Forbes magazine negates and counters this claim of Piyush Goyal to point out that this FDI investment of $21.34 billion has largely been a financial investment by private equity funds and not by strategic long-term players into manufacturing facilities in India. Forbes further says that several MNCs have actually trimmed their exposure to India and they have hived off their India assets, including manufacturing plants, to domestic companies. Such sellers who have sold their India assets include Sanofi, Glaxo, Novartis, Kraft Heinz, Abbott Laboratories and Coca-Cola, which sold off its bottling operations in northern India to a domestic company. The latest in this list of sellers is the Swiss MNC Holcim, which sold off its ownership of ACC and Ambuja Cement to the ever cash-rich Adani Group for about $10 billion last month. Forbes then says that the Prime Minister may have laid out a red carpet for foreign companies to invest in India's manufacturing growth, but in the past few years, many foreign companies have exited India, citing among other reasons an unfriendly business environment in the country. And in that list it mentions Kane Energy, Hutchinson, Lafarge, Docomo, Daiichi Sankyo, Henkel, General Motors, etc. A clutch of companies, leading companies, have left India. It says that between 2014 to 2021, over 2,700 foreign companies and their subsidiaries have shut shop in India for various reasons. India on one hand may have a population of 140 crores with a rising middle class, which shows a huge untapped domestic market. And China, on the other hand, may be facing economic and geopolitical friction and conflicts. Yet, we see no exodus of foreign companies for setting up manufacturing base in India. The Forbes article mentions numerous reasons for this, which shows the ground reality that is there not just for foreign companies, but also for domestic companies who face these kind of difficult conditions in India while doing business here. So what are the reasons that Forbes mentions in its article? The first one it says is that a poor ease of doing business, which explains why despite being the fourth largest market for cars, the likes of General Motors, Ford, Harley Davidson, MAN and Bus have preferred to exit India. The second, General Motors found manufacturing and catering to the domestic market to be very tough, and its mounting losses and rising competition forced it to leave India. Harley Davidson, on the other hand, could not penetrate the Indian market and build volumes because of a very price sensitive and value conscious customer. It then says that the factors that discourage investment in the manufacturing sector in India include the archaic labor laws, the fragile policy framework in India, the lack of simple and stable policies in the country, huge infrastructure deficit which is still there, regulatory uncertainty, huge challenges in acquisition of land with clear titles without any bribes and local conflicts, lack of cheap and stable electricity, unfavorable growth conditions, lack of clarity on taxes which affects long-term corporate planning and strategy for the MNCs that come here, shortage of technicians and skilled labor, particularly for high-end equipment operations and for maintenance, etc. The fact is that India still has a long way to go to become a global manufacturing hub which it desperately aspires to. The irony is that despite being the fastest growing large economy in the world, India has not been able to attract big multi-billion-dollar investments from multinational corporations for setting up manufacturing facilities in India. No wonder. The likes of Raghuram Rajan say that India must focus on expanding its services sector rather than replicating China's model of manufacturing-led growth, since that template of manufacturing-led growth has not worked for India for many years. We think that India will need to aspire to set up a large manufacturing base because that is where all the big jobs are. But for that to happen, it is the government that needs to get its house in order, and that starts with simpler laws, stable policies, and lesser red tape and corruption. This is Akhilesh Bhargav signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.